Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. A stealth warship rises from darkness. Now it hunts the stars. The warship hung in the void like a ghost, black as the abyss, sleek and deadly. Its hull absorbed light, a silhouette cut from nightmares. The abyssal wrath had no insignias, no allegiance, only the whispered rumors of its existence. To most, it was nothing more than a myth, a specter conjured to scare unruly soldiers into discipline. But to the enemy fleets of the Xenal Dominion, it was very real. The scattered remains of their warships, reduced to space dust, were evidence enough. Nobody knew who crewed it or where it came from. It struck from the shadows, leaving devastation in its wake, and then it vanished without a trace. Inside the darkened command center, Captain Diana Grayson moved with precision, her steps silent as the vacuum outside. Her crew operated in complete darkness, their eyes accustomed to the dim glow of tactical displays. She stopped in front of her second-in-command, Lieutenant Kiran Malik, who was studying the latest reconnaissance data. "Report," she ordered, her voice low but firm. "Two Xenal destroyers patrolling the coast belt, Captain. Light escort. Their main fleet is further out, guarding the mining colony on Arzak," Malik replied. Diana's lips curled into a predatory smile. "Perfect. Send the coordinates to targeting. We'll make this quick." As Malik relayed the commands, Diana glanced at the battle map. It was hard to believe how far humanity had come since the fall of Earth. The Xenal had come without warning, a vast armada blotting out the stars, leaving cities as charred husks. Billions died within weeks. The survivors scattered among the stars, fighting back with whatever remnants they could find. But Abyssal Wrath was different. It was humanity's response, the culmination of desperation and genius, built in secrecy on a derelict mining colony. It housed experimental tech no other vessel possessed, cloaking arrays that baffled sensors, weapons that could rip through even Xenal battleships, and a neural command network that made it as responsive as a living predator. It was forged from vengeance and operated under one directive: make the Xenal fear the dark. "Captain," Malik called out, "targets acquired and locked. Awaiting your order." Diana took a deep breath, her heart steady despite the familiar surge of adrenaline. She knew that every shot fired from Abyssal Wrath whispered the same promise: humanity would not die quietly. Fire. The ship hummed, and the void outside briefly flared as pulse cannons tore through the first destroyer's hull. The second turned, but the Abyssal Wrath had already repositioned, sending a torpedo straight into its engine core. A brilliant, silent explosion tore it apart. Diana allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. "Status: no survivors, Captain. Transmission logs indicate no distress signals got out," Malik confirmed. "Good. Begin cloaking. Lieutenant, head for Arzak. Time to send a message." As the ship faded from sight, Diana couldn't help but wonder. Did the Xenal know what hunted them? Did they whisper about the darkness, terrified of the predator lurking in the void? She hoped so. Fear was a weapon as sharp as any blade, and it was one she intended to wield until humanity reclaimed the stars. As the crew went about their tasks with disciplined efficiency, Diana leaned back into her command chair. They would strike again and again until the Xenal remembered why humans were never meant to be cornered. But as the ship moved through the endless void, one thought nagged at her mind. How long could they keep this up before the hunter became the hunted? The answer didn't matter, not now. There were more enemies to kill, more scores to settle. Humanity's vengeance had just begun, and the Abyssal Wrath would make sure the galaxy never forgot. As the Abyssal Wrath drifted soundlessly through the void, Diana couldn't shake the unease gnawing at the edge of her thoughts. The ship was a marvel of human ingenuity, born from shattered hopes and grim determination. It had become a legend, a ghost ship that struck without warning and vanished before alarms could even echo. But every mission carried more weight, more danger. Malik approached, his expression guarded. "Captain, long-range sensors are picking up a distress signal. Human frequency." Diana stiffened, her instincts battling against her training. "Details." Malik shook his head. "Weak signal, repeating. Could be a trap, but if it's human, they're in trouble." Diana's jaw clenched. They had their orders. No distractions, no deviations. But abandoning fellow survivors didn't sit right with her. It wasn't how she was raised. "Pinpoint the source," she ordered. The bridge hummed as data poured through the consoles. Malik's brow furrowed. It's coming from a derelict freighter drifting near the Arzak colony perimeter. Minimal power signatures. Could be a decoy. Diana didn't like it. The Xenal were cunning, and they had started mimicking human distress signals to draw out resistance fighters. But if there was even a slim chance of survivors, she straightened. Helm, 7 approach vector. Keep us cloaked. We'll drift into sensor range. The ship moved like a phantom, edging towards the freighter. On the main screen, the derelict slowly came into view, a massive hulk, its hull pockmarked with battle scars. Diana narrowed her eyes. Scan for life signs, she commanded. Malik tapped at his console. I'm picking up faint biosignatures. 4, maybe 5. They're in the lower decks. No power, no heat signatures. Ship's completely dead. Diana considered the odds. It wasn't uncommon for scavengers to take shelter in abandoned ships, but something about this didn't add up. Send a remote probe, she ordered. Within moments, a small drone slipped from the Abyssal Wrath's launch bay, gliding toward the freighter. It latched onto the airlock, cutting through the hole to gain entry. The feed popped up on the main screen, flickering as it moved through the dark corridors. Debris floated aimlessly, and the walls bore deep plasma burns. Looks like a fight broke out, Malik muttered. Suddenly, the camera jerked and Diana's heart skipped a beat. The probe rounded a corner, its light revealing a cluster of bodies, human, frozen, and lifeless. She swallowed down the grim reality. Damn it, she whispered. But before she could issue a recall order, the feed jolted again. Movement. A faint silhouette slinking through the dark. Diana leaned forward, her instincts on high alert. Malik squinted at the screen. Is that? The figure turned, a gaunt face with wide, terrified eyes. The probe zoomed in, and Diana's heart sank. A young girl, barely in her teens, clutched a makeshift spear, glaring at the probe with defiant terror. She's human, Malik whispered. Diana didn't hesitate. Prepare a boarding team. I'm going over myself. Malik snapped his gaze to her. Captain, it could still be a trap. She met his eyes, her expression unyielding. We're not leaving her to die. Ready the team. Within minutes, Diana suited up, her pulse pounding as the boarding craft glided toward the freighter. As the airlock connected, she drew her sidearm, signaling to the squad behind her. The hatch opened, and they moved in silently, weapons raised. The air was stale, cold. Diana's visor adjusted to the dark as she crept down the corridor. A faint noise, scraping metal, made her pause. She gestured, and her squad fanned out. Ahead, the girl crouched behind a cargo crate, her hands shaking as she held her makeshift weapon. Diana holstered her gun and raised her hands slowly. It's okay, she called out. We're human, here to help. The girl didn't move, her eyes darting between Diana and the soldiers. Finally, her grip on the spear loosened, and her lip quivered. They came, the girl stammered. Killed everyone. Hid in the ducts. Didn't come out, I thought. Thought I'd die here. Diana knelt, keeping her tone gentle. You're safe now. What's your name? Alyssa, she whispered. Diana smiled softly. Alyssa, we're taking you somewhere safe. You're not alone anymore. Suddenly, the girl's gaze shifted past Diana, her eyes widening. No, behind you. Instinct kicked in, and Diana spun around just as a hulking Xenal warrior lunged from the shadows. She fired point blank, plasma bolts searing through its chest. It collapsed, but more shapes moved in the dark. Ambush. Malik barked through the comms. Diana grabbed Alyssa, shoving her behind. Squad, fall back, cover fire. As pulses of energy lit up the corridor, Diana realized the horrifying truth. The Xenal hadn't just slaughtered the freighter crew. They had waited, using the girl as bait. She cursed under her breath, dragging Alyssa towards the airlock as her squad formed a defensive line. More Xenal charged, roaring, their massive limbs thrashing through the narrow corridor. Malik's voice cut through the chaos. Captain, they're swarming. We have to retreat. Diana gritted her teeth. Hold the line. We're not leaving anyone behind. They fought their way back, inch by agonizing inch, the enemy relentless. As the airlock came into view, Diana pushed Alyssa inside and turned to help cover the retreat. Just as the last soldier scrambled through, Diana slammed the hatch, and the shuttle disengaged, rocketing back to the Abyssal Wrath. Breathing hard, she glanced down at Alyssa, who stared back with wide, teary eyes. Diana forced a reassuring smile despite the knot tightening in her chest. The war wasn't just out there. It had seeped into their souls, turning every rescue into a fight for survival. And as the abyssal wrath sped away, Diana couldn't help but feel the burden of guilt pressing down on her. They had saved one life, but how many more were lost because they dared to hope? Back on the abyssal wrath, the crew moved with disciplined haste, securing the shuttle and rushing Alyssa to the med bay. Diana pulled off her helmet, sweat clinging to her brow, and took a moment to breathe. The adrenaline still surged through her veins, but she forced herself to focus. Malik approached, his face a grim mask. We lost two men, Morrison and Lee. The Xenal overwhelmed them before they could fall back. Diana's jaw clenched, and she forced down the rising guilt. Understood. Debrief the squad and make sure their families receive word, if we can find them. Malik gave a short nod and hesitated. Captain, permission to speak freely. She glanced at him, recognizing the tension in his posture. Granted. He lowered his voice. That was reckless. We should have cut our losses. The girl was bait. Damn good bait. Next time, it might be the whole crew. Diana met his gaze without flinching. And next time, it could be someone's daughter, sister, or friend. I won't abandon survivors just because it's risky. That's not who we are. Malik looked at the floor, lips pressed tight. Understood, Captain. She could tell he wasn't convinced, but she didn't have the luxury of making everyone agree with her choices. As she walked toward the medbay, fragments of memories clawed at her own sister, left behind on Earth when the Xenal invaded. Diana had been on an off-world patrol when it happened, helpless to do anything but listen as the planet fell. She couldn't save her own family, but she'd be damned if she didn't try to save others. Inside the medbay, Alyssa sat on one of the cots, a thin blanket wrapped around her shoulders. A medic was running diagnostics while the girl stared numbly at the floor. Diana approached cautiously, her presence making Alyssa look up, eyes still haunted. Alyssa, Diana began, trying to keep her voice soft. You did good back there. You survived. The girl gave a tiny, brittle laugh. Survived? Everyone else died. Mom, Dad, Uncle Ray. They tried to fight, but the aliens just tore through them. Diana knelt next to the cot, resting a hand on Alyssa's shoulder. You did what you had to. You stayed quiet. You stayed alive. That's the hardest fight of all. Alyssa's chin quivered, but she swallowed her tears. They left me there. I thought maybe they'd come back, but they didn't. I'd waited so long. Diana squeezed her shoulder gently. The Xenal don't leave survivors. That used your ship as bait, counted on someone like us to come looking. You're lucky they didn't find you before we did. Alyssa's expression hardened, and a spark of anger flickered in her eyes. I hate them. I want them all dead. Diana didn't correct her. She understood that rage, nurtured it herself. We're working on it. This ship exists to make them pay for what they did. You're safe here. We'll make sure of it. Alyssa gave a tiny nod, but her eyes didn't lose their hard edge. Diana knew that look. It was the same one she saw in the mirror every morning. A girl who had lost everything, struggling to survive on nothing but spite and resolve. Malik's voice buzzed in Diana's earpiece. Captain, you should come to the bridge. We've got movement on long-range sensors. Reluctantly, Diana gave Alyssa a reassuring pat and left the medbay, quickening her pace. When she arrived on the bridge, Malik was already pulling up data on the holodisplay. 3 Xenal warships just dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system, he reported. Heavy cruisers. Looks like they're sweeping for survivors. Diana frowned. They must have caught a fragment of the distress signal after all, or they're following up on the patrol ships we took out earlier. Either way, they're headed straight for Arzak, Malik said. If they spot the mining colony, it's going to be a slaughter. Civilians aren't armed. Diana's mind raced. They could use the colony as bait, lure the cruisers in, and ambush them from the shadows. It would be risky, but they'd pulled off worse. Helm, 7 intercept course, she ordered. Full cloak. We'll position ourselves in the asteroid field and wait for them to cross the kill zone. Malik hesitated. Captain, if they detect us, 3 heavy cruisers might be more than we can handle. We're not letting them massacre another colony, Diana snapped, her tone colder than she intended. If we wait for reinforcements, the people on Arzak are dead. We hit them fast and hard, use the asteroids for cover. If we can take out 1 cruiser quickly, the others might retreat. Malik nodded, though his eyes betrayed a hint of worry. Diana knew it was risky, but if the Xenal found that colony, it would be another massacre like Earth. She couldn't let that happen. Not again. The crew prepared for battle, tension thick in the air as the abyssal wrath moved into position. Diana allowed herself a moment of silence, closing her eyes and remembering her sister's smile, faint and fading like an old photograph. This wasn't just war. It was personal. And as long as she had breath in her lungs, she would make sure the Xenal paid for every soul they had claimed. The enemy cruisers approached, unaware of the predator lurking in the shadows. Diana gripped the command rail, eyes locked on the tactical display. "We wait until they're in optimal range," she murmured. "Then we show them what it means to fear the dark." The abyssal wrath lay in wait within the asteroid field, cloaked and deadly. Outside the viewport, massive rocks drifted lazily through the void, spinning and colliding in a slow, chaotic dance. The enemy cruisers moved in formation, three towering behemoths bristling with weaponry, their hulls gleaming with the sickly green light of Xenal energy cores. Diana watched the tactical display, calculating their speed and trajectory. The cruisers were in a standard sweep pattern, efficient, thorough, and ruthless. If they reached the mining colony, it would be a massacre. She glanced at Malik, who was focused on the fire control systems. Status: main cannons charged and primed. Torpedo bays loaded. Targeting solutions for lead cruiser calculated, he reported, his voice calm but tense. Diana took a breath, her gaze steady. "We take out the lead ship first. It's their command vessel. Once it's down, the others might hesitate. Full power to forward shields during the attack. We can't let them hit our core." Malik gave a terse nod. "Understood. Positioning solutions ready." She keyed the shipwide communication. "All hands, battle stations. This is it. We're taking the fight to them. No mercy, no hesitation. Let's remind these bastards why humanity isn't finished yet." The crew acknowledged, and Diana could feel the tension winding through the ship like a coiled spring. They all knew the odds. 3 cruisers could rip abyssal wrath apart if they got a solid lock. Her hands tightened on the command rail. "Helm, adjust course. Move us closer slowly. I want their targeting array scrambling." The ship glided forward, barely a whisper against the void. Diana watched as the enemy cruisers drifted into the kill zone. The lead vessel, larger and more heavily armored than the others, moved slightly ahead. Its massive turrets swept the area, searching for threats. Diana felt her pulse quicken. "Now, target the command vessel. Pulse cannons and torpedoes. Fire." The abyssal wrath roared to life, pulse cannons lancing through the darkness and slamming into the cruiser's forward shields. The first few blasts shattered the barrier, and the torpedoes followed, streaking through the gap and slamming into the hull. Explosions rippled across the cruiser's bow, tearing armor plates free and venting atmosphere. The enemy ship reeled, its structure faltering, but before Diana could give the order to press the attack, the other 2 cruisers adjusted course, their weapons lighting up. "Incoming fire," Malik shouted. The abyssal wrath veered sharply, evading the first volley, but a plasma burst clipped the aft shields, making the ship shudder. Diana steadied herself, eyes blazing with determination. "Keep moving. Circle the lead cruiser. Use it as a shield against the others," she commanded. The ship darted around the burning wreck, using its bulk to block the line of fire. The lead cruiser was listing now, secondary explosions rippling through its superstructure. Diana couldn't let up, not yet. "Concentrate fire on their core," she barked. The pulse cannons unleashed another salvo, and one shot struck true, right through the reactor housing. A blinding burst of energy erupted, and the command cruiser fractured into 1,000 fiery shards. "First target neutralized," Malik reported, trying to keep the relief from his voice. But the victory was short-lived. The remaining 2 cruisers split, moving to flank. One fired a focused beam that grazed the abyssal wrath's port side, searing the hull. "Port shields down to 30%, Malik called out. Diana gritted her teeth. "Deploy countermeasures. Launch decoy drones and scramble their sensors." Tiny drones shot out from the ship, scattering in a wide arc and broadcasting false signals. The cruisers hesitated, their targeting systems flickering with interference. Diana didn't waste a second. "Turn hard to starboard and fire a torpedo spread. Make it look like a retreat." The abyssal wrath pivoted sharply, feigning a desperate escape. The enemy cruisers bit down on the bait, pursuing with reckless speed. As they moved to follow, the torpedoes detonated behind them, disrupting their formation. "Now, full power to thrusters. Swing around and target their engines," Diana ordered. The ship spun on a dime, firing into the rear of the closest cruiser. The blasts tore through its propulsion systems, and the vessel began to drift, powerless and vulnerable. Diana seized the opportunity. Finish it off. Center mass. The next barrage ripped through the cruiser's spine, and the ship disintegrated, fragments scattering like meteors. Malik glanced at her, his eyes wide with awe. One left, Captain. They're adjusting, preparing to jump. Diana wouldn't allow it. If the last cruiser escaped, they'd call in reinforcements, and the colony would be doomed. Fire the interdiction pulse. Disable their FTL, she commanded. The abyssal wrath fired a shimmering wave of energy that enveloped the cruiser, disrupting its jump drive. The enemy ship slowed, its engines flaring erratically. Diana didn't hesitate. Target their bridge and fire, she said, her voice cold and unyielding. The pulse cannons hammered the cruiser's command center, and a massive explosion blossomed across its front. The vessel lurched, then fell silent, drifting like a gutted carcass. Silence hung over the bridge as the crew processed what they had just accomplished. 3 cruisers annihilated with precision and fury. Diana finally allowed herself a breath, tension leaking from her muscles. Damage report, she requested. Malik scanned his console. Minor hull breaches on port side. Shields recharging. No casualties. Diana nodded, satisfaction tempered with exhaustion. Good work, everyone. Get us out of this field and resume cloaking. We'll report back to command once we're clear. Malik hesitated, then spoke softly. Captain, that was impressive. They didn't stand a chance. Diana met his eyes and allowed herself a faint smile. We hit them where it hurts. Let them tell their kind that humanity isn't done fighting. Let them remember abyssal wrath. As the ship slipped back into the shadows, Diana took one last look at the debris field. The remnants of their enemies scattered like dust in the void. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was retribution. And humanity would not rest until the stars were theirs again. But somewhere in her mind, doubt still gnawed. How long could they keep this up? The Xenal wouldn't underestimate them forever. One mistake, and it would all come crashing down. Diana straightened, pushing the thought away. One victory at a time. That was how they'd reclaim their future. As the abyssal wrath slipped into the safety of deep space, Diana finally allowed herself to lean back in the command chair, exhaustion settling into her bones. The bridge remained quiet, the crew focused on routine checks and system diagnostics. Despite the victory, a gnawing unease lingered in her gut. Malik approached with a datapad, his brow furrowed. Captain, we've completed damage assessments. Minor hull fractures on the port side are sealed. Shield generators are back to 80% capacity. Diana nodded absently. Good work. How's Alyssa? She's stable. Med team says she's shaken up but no injuries besides malnutrition and dehydration. She's eating now. Diana glanced at the tactical display, her thoughts drifting back to the girl's haunted eyes. Just a kid trapped on a ghost ship surrounded by death. Diana knew that look too well. She'd seen it in herself the day Earth fell. Malik, she said softly, we can't keep picking up strays. This ship wasn't built to carry civilians. He hesitated, knowing the truth of it. What do we do with her, then? We can't just drop her off at the next outpost. Too risky. Diana sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. No, we can't. We'll contact command and see if there's a safe point we can reach. Until then, make her useful. Train her. Let her feel like she's part of something. Malik gave her a nod. Understood. Before he could leave, the comm system crackled to life. Bridge, this is engineering. We got an issue down here. Can you come take a look? Diana exchanged a weary glance with Malik. On my way. You got the bridge. She headed to engineering, passing crew members who were busy with routine maintenance. When she reached the main reactor chamber, Chief Engineer Kessler was waiting. His face twisted in a mix of frustration and anxiety. What's the problem, Chief? Diana asked, keeping her voice calm despite the tension creeping into her mind. Kessler gestured to the reactor console. It's the cloaking matrix. We took a harder hit than we thought in that last skirmish. One of the stabilizers is fried, and the backup is glitchy. We're fine for now, but any sustained cloak could cause a feedback loop. Diana frowned. How long to fix it? He grimaced. We need to replace the entire stabilizer coil. Problem is, we're fresh out of spares. I might be able to rig something temporary, but it won't hold up under heavy strain. She felt a chill settle in her stomach. Without the cloak, abyssal wrath was nothing more than a highly armed but painfully visible target. The Xenal would tear them apart. What about salvaging from the debris field? Diana asked, trying to keep her tone measured. Kessler shook his head. We'd need Zemel parts to patch it properly. Their tech doesn't exactly mesh with ours, but I could jury-rig something if we had components from one of their cruisers. Diana's mind raced through the options.